Welcome to you all. Um, it's really my pleasure to be hosting this webinar today entitled ARV and Syntropy, the Spirit of Love. We have with us Ulisse Di Corpo. He has a degree in psychology and in experimental psychology. He has his PhD in statistics and social research. He works in the field of social research and provides methodological support and software tools to researchers. In 1977, he developed what's called the vital needs theory, which is very closely related to the law of syntropy, which has been his focus for a very long time, and that's what we'll be hearing shortly. The book, Syntropy, the Spirit of Love, was written by himself and his wife, Antonella, and before we get into his talk, what I would like to do is briefly connect this up with what we're about, which is the associative remote viewing. So let me do that. From his book, I really want to just talk about this one graphic where he says, whereas causality, our normal causality in time, produces effects that diverge from the past. So here's time going left and right. Here's something happens in the past. It's a cause, and that cause has effects which go forward in time, and that's related to what we refer to as entropy. And he'll be talking more about that, but that's the normal kind of cause that we're all used to. Retrocausality produces effects that converge towards attractors in the future. So looking forward in time, we've got this idea of retrocausality converging towards this really important concept of attractors. And an attractor, if you look at it as we often talk about in terms of precognition and retrocausality, something from the future going backwards in time. Okay, so looking at forward in time, it's converging to the attractor. Going backwards in time, it looks exactly parallel to what's going on for normal causes. Now, how does this fit in with ARV? Well, here's my interpretation of this. The tasking, when you get your original cues, when the tasking comes into your consciousness, that is a cause. That causes all kinds of things to happen in the future, including you getting ready to do your remote viewing session. You now do your remote viewing session. That's a natural effect from the tasking, right? Makes perfect sense. Well, but guess what we are always doing in our precognition, in our ARVing? We are entangling with our feedback session from the future. It is this feedback session that provides the information through the remote viewing session. This is almost like the perfect example, I think, of what this whole idea is about. So this session could be like your feedback session is your short-term attractor, okay? The concept of attractor. But as we all know, one ARV session, while it may be a lot of fun, if you're really doing precognition, you're doing many sessions. And so there is this entanglement between the tasking, the RV, the feedback session. But, you know, sometimes, and I think we've all seen this if you've been around for a while, you will get information from other places, not your intention. We're all working to get better and better at keeping this as our loop. But I've seen, and I know some of you have seen, you get information from even the next session because everything is indeed connected. But what we work on is staying in this loop. But nevertheless, we have another ARV session and another and another and another, and now we're moving out into the future and another and another, and that of course is the plan. And so now you begin to get the sense that these short-term, each of these individual short-term attractors might in fact be involved in a real sense with a long-term attractor as you're getting older and wiser as you do each of these. And you can begin to get this concept of the eternal now, that all of these are connected. And what kind of better attractor can you imagine than the one of love? And with that, I would really like to have Ulisse take over the floor, and I will pass the presentation screen to you now, Ulisse. And I just want to add that the fact that this came into our consciousness, that you're involved in all of this, just makes me so pleased, and I'm just so pleased to have you here with us. So let me turn the screen over to you.
Oh, thank you, Martin. Okay, I start my PowerPoint. Can you see it?
Yes, you just
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Not quite yet. You should have something on your screen.
Yes. Okay, I see. Now?
Yes.
Okay. Very well. I start with a very simple question. Can you tell me who formulated this equation, E equal mc squared? I suppose that most of you will answer that this equation was formulated by Einstein, I imagine.
Right.
Well, the discovery of the E equal mc squared relation cannot properly be attributed to Einstein, since it had been published before by several others, including the Englishman Oliver Hebside in 1890, the Frenchman Henri Poincaré in 1900, and the Italian Olinto de Pretto in 1903. In the scientific journal, and he also registered this equation at the Radio Instituto di Scienze. In deriving these equations, Einstein's predecessors made assumptions that led to problems when dealing with different frame of reference, since the quantity of motion was not present in the equation. So what Einstein did, he succeeded where others had failed by deriving the formula in a way that was consistent in all frames of reference. He did so in 1905 with his equation for special relativity, which adds momentum to the E equal mc squared. This equation is known as energy momentum mass. However, it is a quadratic equation, and it has two solutions for energy, one positive and one negative. As you know, when you use a square root, you always get a positive and a negative solution. In this case, since we have time in the momentum, the positive is a forward in time solution, and it describes energy that diverges from a cause. For example, light which diverges from a light bulb, or heat spreading out from a heater. But in the negative solution, time has the negative sign, and energy diverges backward in time from a future cause. For us, that we move forward in time, that would look like light going back in the light bulb. And this quite understandably was considered unacceptable, since it implies retrocausality, which means that you can have an effect before its cause. Einstein solved this problem by assuming that the momentum is always equal to zero, because the speed of physical bodies is extremely small when compared to the speed of light. And in this way, Einstein's complex energy momentum mass equation simplified into the now famous E equal mc square, which always has a positive solution. But in 1924, Pauli discovered that electrons have a spin which nears the speed of light. Soon after, the Swedish physicist Klein and the German physicist Gordon proposed the Klein-Gordon equation in order to describe quantum particles in the framework of Einstein's relativity. This equation uses the full energy momentum mass equation of special relativity and has two solutions, a forward in time wave solution and a backward in time wave solution. Well, Heisenberg, who was one of the most influential physicists of that period, wrote to Pauli, "I regard the backward in time solution as learned trash, which no one can take seriously." And in 1926, Schrödinger removed Einstein's equation from Klein-Gordon's equation and suggested that time be treated in the classical way as only flowing forward in time. Since then, physicists ignored the backward in time solutions of the fundamental equations. Now, Luigi Fantapié was considered at the beginning of last century one of the foremost mathematicians. He graduated at the age of 21 from the most exclusive Italian university with a dissertation of pure mathematics, and at the age of 27 he was already a full professor. He worked with Enrico Fermi, Heisenberg, Feynman, and in April 1950 he was invited by Oppenheimer to become a member of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton and work directly with Einstein. Well, what happened is that Fantapié was a mathematician, he was not a physicist, so he wanted to understand what the positive and negative solutions meant. So in 1941, working on the D'Alembert operator, which combines special relativity and quantum mechanics, he realized that the forward in time solution describes energy and matter that diverge and tend towards homogeneous and random distributions. For example, when heat radiates from a heater, it tends to spread out homogeneously in the environment. This is the law of entropy, which is also known as heat death. Fantapié showed that the forward in time solution is governed by the law of entropy, whereas the backward in time solution is governed by a symmetric law that Fantapié named syntropy, which means a converging tendency. The forward in time solution describes energy that diverges from a cause and requires that causes be in the past. The backward in time solution describes energy that converges towards future causes, which are now named attractors. The mathematical properties of the law of syntropy are energy concentration, an increase in differentiation and complexity, a reduction of entropy, the formation of structures, and an increase in order. These are also the main properties that biologists observe in life and which cannot be explained in the classical time-forward way. This realization led Fantapie to formulate the unitary theory of the physical and biological world, first published in 1942, where Fantapie suggests that we live in a supercausal universe governed by causality and retrocausality, and that the origin of life is in the future. Well, the law of syntropy implies the existence of retrocausality, but Fantapie failed to devise experiments that could test his retrocausal hypothesis. 70 years later, Antonella Bannini, who is also my wife, formulated the following testable hypothesis. If life is sustained by syntropy, the parameters of the autonomic nervous system that supports vital functions should react in advance to stimuli. And indeed, an impressive number of studies have now shown that the autonomic nervous system, as measured by skin conductance and heart rate, can react before a stimuli is shown. The first experimental study of this kind was conducted by Dean Redden and monitored heart rate, skin conductance, and fingertip blood volume in subjects who were shown a blank screen for 5 seconds, followed by a randomly selected calm or emotional picture for 3 seconds. Redden found significant differences in the autonomic parameters preceding the exposure to emotional pictures versus calm pictures. Antonella conducted experiments using colors. In the first phase of the experiment, people were just looking at colors full screen, and then they were asked to try to guess which color would have been selected randomly by the computer. And heart rate was measured during all the experiment. What we have is that in the first phase, the heart rate reacts accordingly to the color that the computer will select in the last phase. And there is no way to have this information because the color in the last phase is chosen in a totally random way, but the autonomic parameters already perceive this information. A detailed review of the experiment can be found in the book Retrocausality, Experiments and Theory. The results of these experiments show a very strong retrocausal effect on the autonomic nervous system for all the colors. But they also show that a limited amount of this anticipatory information is transferred from the autonomic nervous system to the brain in the way that even if the heart knew what was going to be selected by the computer, when people expressed their guess, they were guessing randomly. And so there is a difficulty to transfer this unconscious information to the conscious level. Now, starting from the dual solution of the energy momentum mass equation of special relativity, the mathematician Chris King speculates that free will arises from the constant interaction between objective and quantitative information arriving from the past and subjective and qualitative feelings arriving from the future. King suggests that living systems are constantly faced with bifurcations which force to make choices. From this constant process of choice arises free will. The forward-in-time flow of information follows linear time and is processed by rationality, whereas the backward-in-time flow takes the form of feelings and presentiments. Since we cannot see the future, syntropic backward in time causality is invisible, whereas entropic forward in time causality is visible. We constantly experience forces and entities that we cannot observe directly, but which exist objectively, such as consciousness and our qualitative inner life. According to the entropy-syntropy theory, any converging force should be invisible. One example is provided by gravity. Suppose we hold a small object, like a pencil, and then release it. We observe that it falls to the floor, and we say that the force of gravity causes it to fall. But do we actually see any downward force acting upon the pencil, something pulling or pushing it? Clearly not. We do not observe the force of gravity at all. Rather, we deduce the existence of some unseen force called gravity in order to explain the otherwise inexplicable fall of objects. According to the energy momentum mass equation, half of the forces acting in the universe are entropic and visible, and half are syntropic and invisible, and nothing takes place without the interplay of both these forces. We constantly experience observable effects that have unobservable causes, behaviors that cannot be explained observably, and phenomena in the visible reality that arise from the invisible reality. The law of syntropy maintains that causality can travel backward in time, although we are accustomed to causes that always precede their effects. It is therefore important to examine the three types of time that Einstein's energy momentum mass equation predicts. The first one is causal time, and it is experienced when the positive energy solution prevails. That is, when systems diverge, such as our expanding universe. We live in a universe which is expanding and which is governed by the properties of the forward in time energy solution. In diverging systems, entropy prevails, causes always precede effects, and time flows forward from the past to the future. No advanced effects are possible under such conditions, such as light waves moving backward in time or radio signals being received before they are broadcasted. Whereas retrocausal time is experienced when the negative energy solution prevails. That is, when systems converge and are governed by the properties of the backward in time energy solution. An example is provided by black holes. In converging systems, retrocausality prevails, effects precede causes, and time flows backwards from the future to the past. In these systems, no retarded effects are possible, which is the reason why we don't see light coming out from black holes. Now, the third type of time is the supercausal time, which is typical of systems in which diverging and converging forces are balanced, and where causality and retrocausality coexist and complement one another. In such systems, past, present, and future coexist, and time is unitary. An example is provided by the quantum world. This classification of time recalls the ancient Greek division in chronos, kairos, and aion. Chronos describes the familiar sequential causal time made of absolute moments that flow from the past to the future. Kairos refers to retrocausal time. According to Pythagoras, kairos was the basis of intuition, the ability to feel the future and to choose the most advantageous options. Aion depicts supercausal time, where past, present, and future coexist. Now, according to this model of time, life originates in the quantum world. And so the question naturally arises of how the properties of life can ascend from the quantum level of matter to the macroscopic level, transforming inorganic matter into organic matter. In 1925, the physicist Wolfgang Pauli discovered hydrogen bonding in water molecules, whereby the hydrogen atoms in water molecules share an intermediate position between the quantum and the molecular level and provide a bridge that allows syntropy to flow from the micro to the macroscopic level. The hydrogen bridge distinguishes water from all other liquids, increasing its attractive forces that are much more powerful than those that hold together other liquids. Water has syntropic properties opposite to those of other liquids. For example, when water freezes, it expands and becomes less dense. The molecules of other liquids instead concentrate when they are cooled, solidify, they become more dense and heavy, and sink. With water, exactly the opposite is observed. When it solidifies, it floats. In most liquids, the process of solidification starts from the bottom, since hot molecules move towards the top and cold molecules towards the bottom. In water, however, exactly the opposite happens. Water solidifies starting from the top. Water has heat capacity far greater than that of other liquids and can absorb large quantities of heat, which is then released slowly. As a result, the amount of heat necessary to raise the temperature of water is far greater than what is needed for other liquids. Hydrogen bonds determine the high cohesive properties of water molecules and impose structural constraints that are extremely unusual for liquids. One example of these structural constraints is provided by crystals of snow. Consequently, the hypothesis is that life originates from the quantum level and that water is essential for the flow of syntropy and life from the quantum level to the macro level. And when life gets into the macro level, it rapidly develops into structures which are governed by syntropy, which is a law opposite to entropy. And then we have a conflict between the syntropic properties of life and the entropic properties of our physical environment. And in order to survive the destructive effects of entropy, life needs to acquire the cohesive properties of syntropy, and the unique properties of water provide this mechanism. Now, as we have seen before, a growing body of empirical evidences showed anticipatory reactions of the autonomic nervous system and suggest that the activity of the autonomic nervous system must be included in any model of the mind. According to the entropy-syntropy theory, the autonomic nervous system connects the individual to the attractor, which is the source of the vital energy of syntropy. While syntropy has concentration properties, it concentrates energy, and therefore when we are heading in the say, right direction when we're going towards the attractor, what we experience are feelings of warmth in the autonomic nervous system, which is usually associated to the heart. These feelings of warmth work a bit like the needle of a compass, since they point to the direction from which we acquire syntropy, which is the most beneficial direction for our future. On the contrary, feelings of emptiness and inner void inform that we are on the wrong path. Well, studying neurological patients affected by decision-making deficits, Antonio Damasio noted that the compass of emotions is not present in patients with specific lesions, especially when there is a damage of the prefrontal cortex that integrates the signals that arrive from the body. These patients show a behavior that can be described as short-sighted towards the future. Feelings seem to constitute an important part of the decision-making process rather than opposing it, and help to promote advantageous choices without having to produce advantageous assessments. Well, the entropy-syntropy theory suggests that the mind is organized on 3 levels. The conscious mind, what we were talking before about free will, the unconscious mind, which is the one associated to the autonomic nervous system, and the superconscious mind, which is associated to the attractor and in a way is outside our body. The conscious mind, to which we are tuned during the time we are awake, connects us to the physical level of reality. It mediates feelings that come from the autonomic nervous system with information that comes from the physical world. The unconscious mind, governed by the involuntary vital functions of the body, such as heartbeat, digestion, regenerative functions, growth, can be assessed through dreams or via techniques of relaxation and altered states of consciousness, such as hypnotic trance. It also implements highly automated programs that allow us to perform many complex tasks without having to think continuously about them, such as walking, riding a bicycle, driving. The autonomic nervous system supplies the body with the properties of syntropy. The superconscious mind is that part of our being that is directly associated with the attractor. The attractor is the source of syntropy, of life energy, and provides the purpose, the mission, and meaning to our existence. It receives the experiences of all the individuals who are connected to it, and selects the information that is more advantageous for life and relays this information to all the individuals. The superconscious mind shows the way, provides solutions and answers. It is the source of inspirations and intelligence that allows us to solve problems. It can communicate with the conscious mind using dreams and symbols, or in the form of feelings of anticipation, presentiments, insights, and inspirations. In AVR, the purpose is to maximize the ability to perceive the future in the form of feelings of anticipation, presentiments, insight, and inspirations. And it is possible to devise specific trainings that can be used for each level of the mind. Another important aspect of the entropy-syntropy theory, which has important practical applications, it is the principle of complementarity. As we all know, energy is a fixed quantity which cannot be created or destroyed, but only transformed. This is the first law of thermodynamics, known as the law of conservation of energy. The entropy-syntropy theory tells that energy can be in the entropic state, that means dispersed, or in the syntropic state, that is to say, concentrated. Consequently, we can write that entropy equals 1 minus syntropy. This equation tells that entropy and syntropy are complementary aspects of the same unity. Entropy is the objective, material, and visible universe, whereas syntropy is the subjective, intangible, and invisible universe of consciousness, the self, and AVR. According to the fundamental equations of the universe, half of the forces acting are entropic and visible, and half are syntropic and invisible. And in this model, we represent this complementarity and interplay between entropy and syntropy with a seesaw where entropy and syntropy play at the opposite sides. When entropy is high, syntropy is low, and vice versa. Entropy is dissipation, destruction, crisis, and suffering. And we can see this everywhere in this moment of history. Entropy limits our perception of the future. In order to feel the future, we need to reduce entropy and to increase the invisible side of syntropy. Also, for this specific point, there are techniques that have been developed, and also training is available for this point. The description of two complementary forces, one diverging and one converging, one visible and one invisible, one destructive and one constructive, can be found in many philosophies and religions. In Hinduism, we find the endless cosmic dance between Shiva and Shakti, which represents the primordial cosmic energy and the dynamic forces that are thought to move through the entire universe. In the Taoist philosophy, we find the Yang principle, which is diverging, and the Yin principle, which is converging. All aspects of the universe are described as the interplay of these complementary fundamental forces. In the Western world, we find the works of Jung and Pauli on synchronicity. According to Jung, synchronicities are the experience of two or more events that are apparently causally unrelated or unlikely to occur together by chance, yet they are experienced as occurring together in a meaningful manner. The law of syntropy requires that causality can really travel backwards in time. This assertion is counterintuitive, as we are accustomed to the fact that causes always precede their effects. More information about this theory is available in the book Syntropy, the Spirit of Love, which has just been published by the International Consciousness Research Laboratories based in Princeton. Another book which I recommend is the Theorem of Love, which describes these concepts using the form of a novel, and so it's very easy to read. They're both available in Kindle. Okay, I have finished my presentation.
Thank you very much. Let's open the floor for questions. So Well, I certainly have even more than one. It was interesting that your focus on the key emotion is love, but I just, I don't know, it sort of makes intuitive sense, um, but I was just wondering if there was a more kind of specific way on how you got to that.
Yes, well, I can show another slide if you want.
Hmm.
Can you see it?
Yes, uh-huh.
Yes. Well, the point is this: is that uh, syntropy and entropy have opposite direction. For example, syntropy is converging, so our consciousness is very, say, uh, um, in a very limited space, very localized. Whereas entropy has inflated the physical reality around us towards infinite. And so when we compare ourselves to the universe, to the outside reality, we discover that we are equal to zero. What Shakespeare says, to be or not to be, while we feel that we exist, we're conscious, but we are aware that we are equal to zero. And this is, I would think, one of the fundamental problems of every human being. We need to find a way to provide a meaning to our life. Well, whichever way we try, for example, if we try to increase our power or our wealth or whatever we do, well, when we compare ourselves to the infinite of the universe, we're always equal to zero. The only way out from this dilemma, from this conflict, is the equation that I've written on the lower part. When we unite ourselves to the universe, then you can take off universe and universe, and I'm still equal to myself. Unity is love, and that means that we can experience the meaning of our life only through love. And that gives to love a very special place, and in a way is the key that solves the major existential problems that people experience. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did, and there was one phrase in there that I think captured it, where you said unity, which is, we talk about that all the time in non-locality, and everything is connected, and all that is a unity. And then you said unity is love.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
that's
syntropy, what happens is syntropy uh, exists because there is a final attractor towards which we are converging. And so we're converging towards unity. If you see the word universe, is it coming from the Latin, it means the direction towards unity. Uni is unity and verse is direction. And so what we're really doing is that the evolution of life and the universe is not diverging, which is what we apparently see, but it's going towards unity. And this is, I don't know if you ever heard about Teilhard de Chardin.
yes. The alpha omega concept. But go ahead. What point? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What? Yes, he developed a theory which is very similar to that of Van-Tapier, and he used to call this final attractor the omega point. And he could see that all the different species of life, he was a paleontologist, and he could see that evolution is converging towards attractors. And um, Well, yes, I've said what I wanted to say. Tell me.
Yes, thank you. Um,
Yes.
there have been some interesting comments in the chat box that you might want to look at. You can see the chat
Well,
box.
I have some difficulties in following the chat box. I don't know. Let me see. Uh, okay, I
Someone
see.
brought up 3 additional forces.
Yes.
Linda, you don't have a mic, Linda? I guess not. Okay, anybody else? Please go ahead and ask a question. I have others, but I'd like the audience to participate.
So, this is Scott. Are there, hi there. Are there exercises besides loving someone that we can do to train our intuition?
Well, working in this field, I've seen that, and at least at the moment, I'm focused on, say, 4 major group of techniques. One of the problems is that at the conscious level, we always have a big chatter in the mind, and this is the consequence usually of the fact that we need to provide a meaning to our life. And this chatter in our mind really disturbs the possibility to feel our heart and to feel the future. So one of the things is to try to reduce this interference. Then another point is at the unconscious level. We when we don't receive enough syntropy, and syntropy is vital for our organism, we experience anxiety, angst, and suffering. And these feelings are so difficult to cope with that people develop habits in such a way that they reduce this pain, this inner suffering. But the same habits reduce our ability to feel the heart, and in this way to feel the future. And so we need to work on these habits that we have acquired through time, and try to overcome them and reestablish this direct contact with, say, I would call it the heart, these feelings of warmth that tell us about the future. And the other point is the superconscious mind. And at that level is, in a way, more difficult to work because we get in contact with the superconscious level, for example, through hypnosis or in very spatial situations of our life. And there is all, say, process that Antonella, she's working on. She's a hypnotherapist that it's aimed to let people experience this superconscious level and reestablish the contact with it. But it is also very important to reduce the entropy in our life, because this contact with the heart, with this syntropic dimension. It's a contact with an invisible side of reality, and sometimes it's very difficult to work on it directly. But what this theory tells is that if we're not able to work directly on syntropy, we can work indirectly, reducing entropy, and that means that when we want to feel the future and follow the most advantageous directions, we need to learn how to reduce entropy in our life. And we live, our lifestyles have become so entropic that it is very easy to find ways how we can reduce entropy in our personal life. And what happens is that when you do that, syntropy starts coming up, and it starts showing through synchronicities. That is what Jung used to describe in his works. Okay.
So we could meditate more and focus on the heart and quiet the noisy chatter of our lives, and we'll connect with the universe more and be in touch with our intuition.
Yes, well, that is one way. You know, there are many ways that can be followed, and they can complement one another. And maybe we could talk about this in the future and get more into details.
Oh, well, obviously that's intriguing. Is that what Antonella is working on, more of that side of it?
Well, she works a lot, I would say, with the superconscious mind,
Yeah.
and then conscious mind. And she works as a psychotherapist. But the techniques that she uses are, say, she's a Ericksonian hypnotherapist, and that gives several tools that can help you get in contact with your unconscious level.
Okay, so it sounds like there are two webinars here. One to talk about, other than meditation. In our area, we talk about cool down. We do a cool down, which is similar to a meditation, and the cool down reduces entropy, just as you're discussing, so that we can open ourselves up to getting information from the future. But can't you give us a hint on what the other three approaches are, or should we wait for another webinar?
Well, I don't want to be, say, confused in the way how I can describe these points, because I think that I should put, say, up a PowerPoint presentation which is well organized.
Okay.
And one point is that, for example, at the unconscious level, we have habits that we're attached to, and it is necessary to understand, become aware of these habits, and see what we can overcome. And that means that working in this direction can affect a lot our lifestyle. You need to develop an appropriate lifestyle in order to maximize this perception of the future.
Okay, that's good too. Yeah, because it's a lot more than just the individual sessions. Okay, and I accept that. And you know, it almost sounds like reduce entropy, increase syntropy is another webinar, and then super consciousness.
Well, it could be, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's great. We'll stop on that one. What other questions? Anyone else from the audience, please?
I have other questions, but if someone else wants to go.
Yeah, let's give them a chance. Because okay, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah. So if we want to design, an effective cool down, meditation, remote viewing session, and then feedback, so we can meditate and do stuff on this side of the timeline. And how can we do stuff on the feedback side of the timeline so it's a better attractor, so we can see it better? Is there some way to combine love?
You mean how we can work on the syntropy level?
I want a feedback session that we can. Well, I want the feedback session to be more clear to us in the future. I want a picture. I don't know, whatever it is we're sending back in time to be more, bright and easy to see.
Well, as we were saying before, one of the easiest way is to reduce entropy. And that is not just to cool down or to do meditation, but it could also mean to change our lifestyle and try to understand where we have entropic habits or entropy in our life, because we continuously choose what to do, and whenever we choose, we can choose a direction which is more entropic and one which is less entropic. And starting from very, say, from things that might seem not related to all this, like for example, reducing the entropy of our apartment, or the way how we travel, or what we eat and how we meet people. Well, if we find in our personal life ways to reduce entropy, and it is different for each single person. There is not one solution that is common for everyone. In a way, you have to see how the person lives, how it produces entropy, and how you can reduce it. Well, if you can reduce entropy in your life, then syntropy raises up. And all this, say, invisible world starts to activate, not only in remote viewing, but also in your daily life. And it becomes very advantageous. You find a huge benefit when this invisible world starts to show up.
Are there ways, and you almost, I thought we're thinking of something, are there ways to work on directly increasing the syntropy?
Well, that is more difficult. You can work like Antonella does with hypnosis or with types of meditation, but everyone has a very different reaction. For example, in my personal case, I like a lot Zen meditation, but I know that a lot of people don't like it. They're not able to stand Zen meditation. So that is a way that works with me, but I cannot tell that everyone should do that. So what you can provide is, say, a series of possibilities, and then each one of us has to experiment them and find which is its own way to work directly with syntropy. But one point that I find very important is that when we start working with syntropy and we start listening to our heart, in a way the heart starts getting the command. When we find the direction, it's very difficult not to go in that direction. That means that there is a conflict often between, say, the syntropic part that comes up and the dreams that we have, because often the dreams that we have been produced by the expectations of our friends, family, and the society in which we live. And when instead syntropy starts raising up, we start discovering our mission, which might be sometimes very different from our dreams. And so a very difficult situation may arise, and it's not, say, easy process, this. Sometimes we just don't want syntropy to show up because we don't want to change our life.
Interesting, very, very interesting and true. I've got a question. It changes the tone here, but I'd like to go back to your colors slide, the
Yes.
red, blue, green.
I'll go to it.
I thought that was quite interesting, and I want to make sure I understood. Yeah, right there. What I mean, one interpretation of this is that when the color red came up, there was a very clearly different physiological response precognitively, retrocausality.
Yes, it was retrocausal, but it was not associated to the moment when the person was looking at the red color. In a way, it was, it could be measured in all the first part of the trial, and the effect is very strong because we could see differences that went up to 2-3 heart rates increase or decrease, but subjects responded in different ways. That means that in some subjects, when the red color target was chosen by the computer in the last phase, you had an increase in the heartbeat, in the heart rate, whereas in other subjects you had a decrease in the heart rate.
Okay.
So that makes it very tricky, because when you use classical statistical analysis, when you have opposite effects, they tend to erase each other and you don't see it in the statistical analysis. So what we had to do here were analysis within each subject.
Okay.
And then use this data in a way which is different from what is usually done. Because what we found out is that when you want to work on retrocausality, you need to study the effect using non-parametric statistics. Instead, when you use parametric statistics, which is the classical ANOVA test or t-test, retrocausal effects tend to cancel each other because they can go in opposite directions in different subjects.
Okay, so this is one person, and I want to understand the timeline. So, and the right scale is some sort of normalized heart rate. So the heart rate actually doubled and the horizontal.
No, it's not that. Say the 0 point in this subject could be 70 heart rate, for example.
Right.
And when it was red, when the computer was going to choose red, it increased up to, say, 72 heart,
Okay.
heart rate.
Okay. And the time scale, um,
But,
he was shown the color at what time?
well, the person was shown, for example, we used many different trials, but in this example, the subject was shown for 4 seconds the blue color, then for 4 seconds the green color, for 4 seconds the red color, for 4 seconds the yellow color, then a full screen image with the 4 colors came out, and with a button on each color, and the subject had to try to guess which color the computer would have selected afterwards. And then after this, the person chose a random procedure started, and the color was selected by the computer. And there was no way for the participant to know which would be the color selected by
Right.
the computer.
Okay, so the big spike at 8 seconds. I'm just trying to see where the precognitive part came in here. So he was actually seeing green and then red. I now understand the scale and I just didn't get it the first time. At the 4 seconds they were seeing blue. But then what is the blue, red? See, I still don't quite get this. In the sense that you've got all 4 color curves here.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I have to add is that this trial was repeated for each subject 100 times. So what you're seeing here is the data of these 100 trials that the subject went through. It's not one trial.
Okay. And the red is when red turned out to be the precognitive target, and green is when the green was the precognitive target?
Yes. And in this subject, what
In
happened
this
was
one
that the
subject.
heart rate, when red was the target, it increased.
Oh,
The green, it increased, whereas the yellow and blue decreased. In other subjects, you have a totally different pattern.
no, I get that. But all of the subjects had the blue, green, red, yellow in that order for 16 seconds. And then the effect of the
No, no,
precognitive.
no. We
uh,
used also different type of.
okay.
We have the experiment has been done in many different ways, and the pattern has also been a random pattern. We have also used different probabilities in the target, and what we did also was to to have the computer select the target, but to show it or not show it randomly. And what was very interesting was that when the computer was selecting the target, but it was not showing it, it was just showing a gray, say, display, the effect was just vanishing. It was null.
Uh,
And so the effect was there only when, in the last phase of the trial, the computer was showing the target.
okay. You better do your feedback and actually look at the picture. It helps. The final one. Okay, I think I do understand that. So independent of the 4 colors, order, and all of that, for one particular subject, there is nevertheless a precognitive difference in the signal. And of course, that's very significant. Dean did it very differently. He didn't use colors.
But what it is interesting,
Yeah, yeah, okay, I get it. Very good.
what
Thank you.
it is interesting is that the ability of the person of guessing the color was very, very low, was nearly chance.
Right.
So this information was not, in a way, going from the autonomic nervous system to the head. And that means that we really have a kind of split between the head and the autonomic nervous system.
Yep. And that, I think, goes along with your whole idea of reducing the entropy so that you could listen better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I do see there's another question from Igor. Are there other attractors from the future, not just emotions?
Well, Teilhard de Chardin, this paleontologist, used to say that each species has its own attractor. And so the idea is that there is a kind of hierarchy of attractors, and you can have attractors that, like the attractor of the, say, the eyes, which is a design, and we constantly provide information to this attractor, and this attractor, in a way, relays information backward in time. And that means that we can connect to different attractors, and in these attractors there is, say, an intelligent design which is already there, which has developed through these interactions between individuals and attractors. So we can have many different attractors. Also, when we have a business, there is an attractor that that business is following. And what is very important is to be able to connect to that attractor. A good manager is a person that is able to feel the attractor, is able to feel what is good for its company. And but at the end, all these different attractors, they tend to converge to a common attractor, which is the one which is in a way moving everything. It's like if gravity is the force that is moving all the planets and all the stars, and at the same time love is the attractor which is moving all the different types and forms of life. And it's not only individuals, but it's also organizations, nations, and so on. And when we diverge from this attractor, we end in producing more entropy, and it becomes very dysfunctional for everyone.
Okay, good. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Mark. Hi. I'm just curious, the word entropy is getting used a lot, and it's
well, I'm not really able to hear your voice very well.
I'm sorry. I'm just curious. So the word entropy is getting used a lot in very general ways, and I'm trying to understand better what entropy means in terms of, like, how you say reducing entropy in your life. Maybe you could provide examples of what that may look like, or why chatter in the mind is equal to entropy, as you say.
Well, as I said, I had difficulties listening to your voice, but if I'm not wrong, you're saying if I can provide examples on how to reduce entropy in our everyday life. Was this the question?
Yes, essentially, yes.
Well,
Okay.
not only what, he also wants examples of entropy in the mind, sort of, Mark. Is that what you were getting at?
That is, yes.
Yeah, like chatter. You know, that.
Why is mental chatter? Why is that entropy? That too.
Well, you know, when you find a way to reduce the mental chatter, for example, in my case with Zen meditation, what at the beginning I had this chatter that was just going on, but slowly you're able to experience very short moments of silence between one chatter and the other, and then this silence just becomes wider. And what you discover is that really the power is not in the head, but is in the heart. Because when you have an idea that comes, if you pay attention to that idea, it grows. If you don't pay attention to it and you just observe it, it decreases. But who pays attention is not the head, but is the heart. So reducing the chatter of the mind means shifting our attention from the mind, from the head to the heart. And that is, in a way, the message of Syntropy is really that, is that in this moment we are centered on the head. We try to find consciousness in the head. We think that the head is the most sophisticated tool of our body, but in order to come out from the chatter, you need to move the focus away from the head, and depending from the techniques that you use, you tend to arrive to the heart as the place where to focus your attention. Did I answer?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Yes.
Eva, are you asking? You don't have a mic either, Eva? Okay, so let me just read what you. Ulisse, this is from
Yes.
Eva. Well, maybe you can read. Did you get different outcomes with different colors? Did people have different perceptions or different syntropy towards different colors? Yeah, okay, we talked about that. Oh, in other words, oh, no mic today. Okay. I think he answered that, didn't he, Eva? That different people do have different reactions.
Well, people react in very different ways, and what we found is that we could have the most strong precognitive effects, say retrocausal effect, using blue, red, green, and yellow. If we used mixed colors, the effect tended to reduce, and if we used shapes, the effect, the retrocausal effect, was very, very limited. So in a way, colors are very important because, in a way, we associate them to emotions, and what moves backward in time are emotions, are feelings. And so if we want to have information moving backward, one of the things is to use, say, stimuli which have colors in it.
Say that again. What was the last one? Have colors in it? What was the word before
Well,
that?
for example, if you want to put up an experiment in which you're trying to receive information from the future, according to these experiments, if you use colors in these experiments, for example, you have a picture that you're trying to guess how it will be placed in the future. Well, if this picture has blue, green, red, and yellow colors in it, the precognitive effect will be stronger, according to these experiments.
Interesting. We can put targets embedded in a background of color or something like that. And okay, that's interesting. Let let's see, was there another question?
There was sort of a question about balance. You know, you have that equation where you have entropy and syntropy, and what kind of balance do you want? You hinted that you could certainly have too much syntropy coming
Well,
back. That would be like
yes.
not being grounded.
Well, you know what life tends to do is to reduce entropy and to increase syntropy, because entropy is destruction. It destroys your cells, your structures, and it leads you to death. But in a way, there is an interplay between entropy and syntropy. If you raise syntropy too much, then it becomes, in a way, pathological, because in order to evolve and to grow, we need also to destroy what we have done. So we don't need only to build, but we need also to destroy in order to build something new. So there is a interplay between entropy and syntropy, but as a tendency, life tends to increase syntropy and to reduce entropy. In this moment of history, especially in the West, entropy is very, very high. And so it's very important in this moment to reduce entropy and to increase syntropy. In a society where entropy would be very low and syntropy would be very high, maybe we should do the opposite. But in this moment, in the West, we need to reduce entropy.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
So,
okay.
Go ahead. One more question.
Yeah, and I have one too, so yeah, go ahead.
So one way to increase entropy is to do meditation. And most meditations want you to concentrate on one thing, like a mantra or your breath or connecting to the universe. Some meditations would have you purposely expand out into the universe or the spaces between things or whatever. What kind of, so based on what you're presenting here, there would be some kind of meditations that would be better at increasing syntropy than others, and would it help to focus on the heart area or the thorax area?
Yes, well, in my personal experience, what I found very useful is silence, just silence. And then observe yourself and just become an observer. Meditation can be very tricky sometimes. Sometimes it leads you to increase syntropy. Some other times it might even stop you from going in that direction. So you have to be very careful and find what really helps you, and experiment many different situations and solutions, and try not to get hanged to any one of them.
Okay, I have, again, a different question. You talked about water.
Yes.
And of course, on Earth, in almost every place, water is obviously key, and you went into, I think, a really good explanation of why. However, I thought you might have implied that that's the only way life can form. And it may be the easiest for the reasons you said, but it's hard to believe it's the only. In fact, I think there are bacteria that live in, I don't know, baths of some other kind of fluid and stuff like that.
Well, there are very few fluids that have similar properties, but not so strong as water. One is ammonia. So you could have life coming out from ammonia. But what I find interesting is that according to this theory, wherever you have water, the process of life starts. So, for example, in a comet, when the ice starts melting and becomes water, the life process would originate, would activate. And that could explain why in meteorites from comets they have observed very simple biological structures. And I personally think that in any part of the universe, in any planet where there is liquid water, the process of life is working. But as I was saying before, the reason why water is so special is because of the hydrogen bonding. And the hydrogen bonding is also present in few other types of water, for example, ammonia.
Well, I happen to agree with you about water and life. I think, like on Mars, they're eventually going to find that the water there has in it some sort of life. I want to connect this with one other thing, which I've always been interested in, and that's the zero-point energy field, which
Yes.
would play itself out rather extensively in, of all things, hydrogen and hydrogen bond, because there's so much empty space there. Have you ever made any kind of connection with zero-point energy field and hydrogen and that sort of thing?
Well, I've not worked on it, but I know that you can find a lot of, say, links, and probably in a different way, we're talking about the same thing.
That perfect. That's what I feel too. I mean, I think they're quite connected.
Yes.
And okay, excellent, good. Let's see. Did anybody add anything?
I
100.
have a short question.
Sure.
Is there a way to measure when someone is in a balanced state with syntropy?
Well, you can measure the quantitative side, which is entropy, but the qualitative side, which is syntropy, you cannot really measure it. You can work on it with statistics, but it's more in finding structures and correlations. So we can put up, say, a test, a tool that allows people to express their feelings and their subjective reality, and then we can see how this information structures and how it correlates with, say, what we can use as a benchmark, as a reference. But it's a totally different way of measuring. And we have worked a lot in the field of management in trying to measure this field, but the approach is in a way different from the classical approach that you have with entropy.
In fact, let me suggest that what we are doing with our associative remote viewing, which is precognitive, a measure of whether or not you've got this balance, whether you've got the syntropy going, and the qualitative part of it, are you getting correct information, is in the very results that we get. And as Ulisse said, the statistics kind of show this over a longer term, and maybe those details, when you get that really super match of your target with your transcript, really take note of what went on there, because the result in many ways, I think, is the measure that you've used the syntropy qualitative information energy. You know, the words get a little tough here, but to the extent you've been successful in your precognitive um, exercise, your prediction, um, you have indeed balanced things just right.
Yes, well, what I can add is that from a subjective point of view, when syntropy is low, we experience depression and anxiety, angst. So when we have this kind of feelings, we we can activate ourselves in trying to reduce entropy and increase syntropy. And that can be done in many different ways. Like we can acquire syntropy from nature, from the environment, or being with people that we love to be with, or doing arts, or doing, anyone has a different way. But usually we have these signals that activate in our life until that entropy is high and syntropy is low. And one is depression, and the other one is anxiety, angst.
Okay.
So do you do remote viewing, and is there something that helps your remote viewing?
Well, I've done some, but I don't do it usually. Because I didn't have a need to do that. But in your daily life, you're always dealing with the future, and all the decisions that you do are future oriented, and so in a way, this remote viewing is something that you're constantly engaged with. And I think that to live a happy life means also to be able to feel the future and to react in the most appropriate way ahead of time.
Okay. Ronald, I saw you. Did you have a question or anything? Somebody else? Comment? Okay. Perhaps we're done. Last chance. Ulisse?
I was wondering.
Yes, Linda, go ahead.
I was just wondering if my microphone is working.
It is.
So I guess it is. Yeah, this is. It's really added to my understanding. I feel like a little bit more of the darkness has dissipated. It helps me understand why I meditate. I started in 1969, and I can see now how meditation works. Where all this stuff is coming from, it's hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put into words.
Well, that is usually the problem, is that when you get into this field, it's a field where emotions play a big part. And it is very, very difficult to translate these feelings, these experiences in words, because words in a way follow linear time and tend to be more on the entropy side than on the syntropy side.
It really helps a lot, the idea of time just the balance of time that, because I felt this in meditation so often, I never thought to call it attractors, but I will sense all of this in the future, and it's like I can just feel time flows, and I studied everything I could find in physics, metaphysics, psychology, and medicine on the nature of time because of having precognitive dreams and as a teenager. I just had to figure out what was happening. But this helps me understand all of that.
Okay, that's great, Linda. That's great. And I think precognition and love and the way they're connected to an eternal time, this universal consciousness, all of that is just, I mean, just so wonderful. And those of us in this field that are really now starting to pay attention to time and precognition, um, I just, certainly myself and the people I talk to, really are feeling just like you, even though it's hard to put in words, it just seems so beneficial because we're beginning to consciously now connect up with the own future that we make. ARV is so good that way because you get to see this connection, and it does open you up to all kinds of aspects which are in the rest of your life, not just while you're doing your sessions. And I found it quite interesting that Ulisse uh, discussed that this goes, you know, throughout your whole life. And of course, it's there all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. Okay, other comments, questions?
Oh, just one other thing. Um, Entropy and centropy to me would, well, the centropy really helps me understand RV better, like the way that I sense things. And entropy, I would think, just from my background in the meditative traditions, that entropy and centropy would be like having two hands. That entropy is not necessarily anything negative. It's only negative when it's in excess, but when it's in balance, when the two are in balance, then entropy would provide the bedrock. It would be what has come into being and naturally being modified by what is coming. So it would, I think it's probably important not to see entropy as something negative. But,
I totally agree with you. What we have to see is that there is a necessary interplay between entropy and syntropy. Because if there wouldn't be this interplay, there would be no evolution. And so they are both necessary. And for example, entropy leads systems to death. But death is necessary if you see it from a broader way, because if individuals would not die, there would be no way to have the evolution of humankind. But at the same time, Syntropy introduces the idea that life is not limited to a single individual life. In a way, I'm working on these ideas. I've developed really the belief in a way, but I can say I have a lot of elements that support this belief that our life goes through many individual lives. And death is a very important transition because it allows us to progress and to come again, only keeping the positive advantages part of our experience.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, for all of us, thank you very much for your presentation and your time. And I'm certainly going to work to have us have more of these. And yeah, yes, all kinds of people are thanking you, and I certainly appreciate the time you gave us, and we'll be talking more in the future.
Yes. It has been a great pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.